Back at the table with this week's Line Opinion panelists. Now we just heard from Joey Peters from the New Mexico Political Report. And Martha, what do you take away from the fact, and let's start with this, the fifth. What does it actually mean? A lot of people, they hear this term, it's been around forever. There's been an infamous Dave Chappelle spoof of it years ago. The fifth, what is it actually when you think about it?
Well, first, let me say I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV.
There you go.
But I will explain it in sort of lay terms if I can. It is the right not to testify against yourself for fear or concern about self-incrimination.
Okay.
But going further, the fact that you took the fifth is not an incriminating thing either. So they do have, the folks that did it have the right to do it. Was it good judgment? I don't think so, but it was certainly within their rights.
Thank you for setting it up that way. That actually makes a difference. Now let's get to the meat of it. Like you said, it doesn't look good. They have the right to do it. I'm sure they're getting their legal team together. This thing has come fairly quickly in the process. They've had to sit down and actually answer these questions. How are we supposed to take this as voters, as taxpayers? How are we to perceive 97 times pleading the fifth over basic operations?
Well, I think we perceived two things. There was something going on that was probably at least unethical, if not illegal, extremely bad judgment, and I think there's a lot of fear on the part of the employees that are involved in it. After all, they apparently, from what ex-employees say, everyone was pressured or convinced to be part of this fraud. That they were perpetuating on the clients, which is the worst of it, but also on the government and the citizenry in general. So I think that's the takeaway right now. And a lot of folks are probably wondering if, even though, I mean, it goes back to the whole World War II thing, I was told to do it. Does that mean that they are not going to be prosecuted themselves because they did do it?
That's right. That's right. Interesting analogy there. Alicia, we're talking about folks who are really in such need. It really is galling when you think about what's going on here. That's the part here, the facts of the matter are not good. It's not as if this is just some esoteric inside baseball moving around paperwork. This is folks who need to eat today, not a month from now, but today. Does that work against them in people's, perception of how
I absolutely think so. And Martha said she didn't play a lawyer on TV, but I thought when I heard this case that I was listening to a bad episode of Law and Order. When I heard about the case itself and then pleading the fifth over 97 times, it's a travesty. Denying a person the basic human right or human necessity of food is a travesty. And these are the neediest of families in New Mexico, and the fact that they took it upon themselves, these HSD officials, to doctor up documents, to doctor up applications to deny that right is a complete travesty. And I think that it's now important to talk about how it's going to be addressed. What agencies are going to come in to evaluate the situation, because I think that we've only hit the tip of the iceberg here. Sounds like it's an epidemic across the department because it happened in different cities and towns. And I mean, what's the governor's take on this? I know that there's been a lot of controversy with the behavioral health scandal with the Secretary of State. I want to know where the accountability is, and if there's not going to be accountability within state government, what outside agency is going to come and do that? Because we are denying the neediest of families in New Mexico a basic human right here.
Right. Senator, on the HSD side of this, are they going to be able to get a fair hearing, it seems to me? I mean, Alicia mentioned the other things going on with the department almost clouding over these situations. I'm curious if they're going to get a fair, people are going to look at this fairly and say, okay, they have the right to have their side of it, certainly. They have the right to plead their side of it. But if people are going to accuse them of being guilty right off the bat, it's going to be a difficulty for them.
Well, it's a good point, and I mean, the reality is it's another black eye for HSD, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, and frankly, I'm tired of the administration blaming the previous administration for all these things.
Which happened this week.
If in fact this happened in 2003, if it began then, I mean, they've had 6 years to clean it up. The reality is, fraud and abuse occurs in government. Whether you have legislators taking money off of capital projects, school officials extorting money. The spin on this is interesting, though, because these are employees that shut the door to people who had access to services. And I'm wondering if there's some connection between these affairs and the conviction recently of the Human Services employee who, along with 5 co-conspirators, was found guilty of creating 25 fraudulent SNAP accounts. And this, this conviction just in the last 30 days or so. So, the major question, I think, is did the state order it? And frankly, I can't imagine that that's the case. Right. You have lower level employees, looks like it's centered around Silver City, maybe Taos, and all of this. I think the takeaway is we need to really reward whistleblowers. I mean, the public, the public is, this is inexcusable, it's intolerable, it's got to stop. So, I hope the whistleblowers are given some kind of protection and they're given some support.
Because some of them are still current employees. Not all are retired.
And they're concerned.
That's
and then
right.
Middle management needs to understand how to respond to these kinds of things. I mean, in the private sector, you get negative feedback. You huddle, you say, how can we make it better? Right. Some people, they get that negative feedback and they think, oh my goodness, this is going to look bad on my job and my position. I'm worried about keeping my position, so let's keep it hush-hush. We need to bring this out, open it up, get to the bottom of it, and, again, I think there's some unanswered questions here.
Dan, interestingly, as Senator mentioned, there's been accusations of this going back to 2003, when in fact it's gone back further than that, hasn't it? This is part of a consent decree, that things just have not moved along.
Yes, this litigation has been going on for quite some time. I think that in the legal context, perhaps it makes sense to plead the Fifth, but certainly in a sort of a broader sense, the public does deserve some explanation of how this happened and what's being done to fix it and address it.
Is that best addressed by folks higher up than those pleading the Fifth at this point, who, as Mark said, are middle management folks? Have we yet to hear from people higher than that?
Yeah, I don't know who is the right person to address that, but certainly the public deserves to know what happened, why, and what's being done to fix it.
And the bottom line to this, of course, is we have a secretary of the agency who has now been called on to resign by Senator Jerry Ortiz-Pino. And folks are, again, not having it anymore, it seems to me. But is that too far? Is that a bridge too far for you, that the person resigned?
I don't think it is a bridge too far, Gene. This was systemic. It was in several areas of the state. It was long-lasting. Yeah. This wasn't one or two people breaking the rules. It was department policy. And if Brent Ernest did not know about it, pardon me, he should have. And so, no, I don't think it's a bridge too far. I think what the senator has said is if he can't come up with something very soon, he should resign. If he didn't know about it, he should have known about it. He should have been out there in the field talking to people when he first got the position. And this probably would have come to light then.
Right. So, we have the Attorney General's on this now, too, as a matter of fact. Alicia, the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty is asking for the federal government to come in and put this part of this department under federal receivership. And that's a fairly serious step, and no state government wants to have that happen. It's almost a black mark on your whole operation if the feds have to come in and take over part of it. But I'm curious, in your mind, do you feel like they have a strong case for this, for the feds coming in and taking over the part of this department?
I think they do, and for the simple reasons that I explained before. When you have the behavioral health issue that was addressed earlier this year, or still being addressed with the Secretary of State scandal, what we're proving as a state government and under this governor's administration is that there is an accountability within the state government that can handle a process of auditing these departments to ensure that they're delivering the services that they're supposed to deliver to New Mexicans. So I don't think it's a far stretch to think that the federal government might have to come in and take over.
Senator Bontano, what do you think about that, federal receivership? Is that opening a door we don't want to go down, or what happens there?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. In terms of, calling on the Secretary to resign, I think that's a stretch.
Okay.
But what it does is
Is there an accountability issue you can see under? Okay.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the buck stops here.
Yeah.
Not the Richardson administration, but the buck. I think the Secretary understands that, but it throws fuel on the fire. It calls new attention to the issue. I mean, there's a strategy behind calling for a resignation, there are internal audits within HSD that are in place. My guess is, the state auditor has said, I'm going to take a look at this. We got the federal government taking a look at it. We need to put everything on the table. We need to make everything transparent. We got to get to the problem, and we got to fix it.
Dan, we'll finish with you. The next bit of hearing on this is in July. It seems like the timetable's been moved up a little bit. Folks were thinking it could be a little bit longer than that. What's your sense of what might happen next here? I know I'm not asking you to predict, certainly, but is there some step that's out there that we're just not seeing that the state government could use? Because someone has to answer to the federal government now at this point. This is not like a state hearing or a local hearing. This is serious business.
Yes, it certainly is serious. You know, federal receivership would be a pretty dramatic remedy. It's not for me to say whether it's warranted in this case, but even within the Department of Justice investigation into APD, for example, the department was never put under you know, federal leadership. You know, the department itself is carrying out the reforms. I don't know whether that is a possibility in this case or not. Clearly, it's a complex problem and complex litigation. Otherwise, it would have been solved earlier. We're entering. I think this started in the late 80s.
Right.
It's been quite some time. So there probably is not an easy answer, but hopefully the attention that's on it now will result in
That's
some
right.
good
Everyone's
coming
looking
out of it.
now. That's right. Exactly right. Now, when we come back, The Line discusses the management of undercover drug stings in the Albuquerque Police Department.